Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla and let's go over the broader market. Worth noting, guys, don't forget the market is closed tomorrow. So if you wish, I actually will still make a video tomorrow, but I'll go over every single of the Mag 7 stocks. Kind of a bonus video because, to celebrate Thanksgiving, I guess, for my Americans. If you like that, hit the like button to let me know if you'd want to see that tomorrow. But all that being said, let's jump into it. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button as well. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts, and the charts, well, again, I invite you to join my private YouTube membership where I'm constantly sharing my thoughts, post updates every single day as the market is open and trading. So definitely check that out. That first link in the description of the video gives you access to join if you wish. Just $3 a month. That's all it is. You get access to all my Tesla updates, broader market updates, SPY, Qs, VIX, different time frame analysis, options, flow. Again, just $3 a month. However, $5 a month for tier 2 also upgrades you to include all my NVDA updates as well. And of course, if you want the full package, $7 USD a month includes, well, the tier 3 package where it includes all my tier 3 posts for stocks that are essentially not Tesla, not NVIDIA, and access to my private Discord. I do chart reviews every single Sunday. And of course, we have a tier 3 kind of, day trading-ish, if you will, chat room there as well. So again, check it out if you're interested. But jumping into it, Tesla closing the day up 1.69% on the day, closing at 426.49. So what does this mean moving forward? Well, we talked how Tesla, after this kind of situation that was unfolding here, and after we had this nice green candle here, right? Well, I guess white candle, if you will, but whatever. We started showing strength. We started showing strength because we started closing candles above levels that we were unable to before. That's the first sign of strength that, was a good sign to see. And then I mentioned yesterday how we most likely get that dip down here. And then as long as we recover, things should be looking pretty good because we turned this area that was a resistance into support at the bottom area. Now we did the same thing up here, which was good. And we turned essentially that 21 EMA up here into support. And we also turned this kind of upper region of resistance into support as well, which is exactly what I was talking to my members about this morning. You can see, right, as we came down into it, I was telling my members about it right here that, what, guys, this is a good spot. This is exactly where it needs to come in, but I don't want to see much lower than about 414 to 415. And we didn't, which is good. We ended up just riding this cloud higher. Now, I ended up adding this little cloud. It's essentially the same thing. Nothing changes. It's just, I think, kind of easier on the eyes. It's a little bit easier to see the visual cues, if you will, of the exponential moving averages, the 921. I don't know. I think it's cool. I like it. Something about it just kind of looks nice. So we'll see how it goes. But nonetheless, things are looking good. Things are looking pretty damn good, I must say. So moving forward, what I want to see on Tesla stock is continued holding of this sort of 921 EMA situation. You can see this is the first time they got not only bullish, but they also crossed above the 50 on the 1 hour. So things are definitely flipping back to bull mode. So with that being said, we also printed a hanging man candle. Now, all things considered, it is worth mentioning that a hanging man candle, you're going to see some people might start talking about it over this long weekend, or I guess tomorrow is the day off, but you're going to see people start talking about this hanging man candle. A lot of people say it's a bearish candle. People say it's a bearish reversal candle. And from my experience, and honestly, even statistically, it's not. It's not that bearish. Honestly, it's of all the bearish candles to get at the top of a potential trend, because you can argue that we're in this little uptrend right here, and this bearish candle is going to reverse the trend lower. There is a risk always, right? For instance, if we ever start closing and losing 2 days low, that would be a red flag. But it's also worth mentioning, in case you see these posts, again, in my opinion, it's probably one of the worst bearish reversal candles. It's pretty bad. I wouldn't put too much faith into them. In fact, arguably, you can see here, statistically, it's actually a bullish continuation 59% of the time. So, theoretical performance, bearish reversal, tested performance, bullish continuation 59, pretty much 60% of the time. So it's not, again, I'm only bringing this up just in case you see posts about this, people saying, oh my God, hangman candle is about to tank. It's always a risk. Nothing's guaranteed, but it's not really the best one in the world. If anything, again, I actually think, if anything, this confirms the fact that there's a higher chance than not that we actually go even higher, maybe as early as Friday. Friday's a half day, but maybe into Monday, depending on how quick it happens. Now, we are approaching a major level, though, right? We are approaching that major level. We ended up holding the level down here. The bulls ended up coming in clutch. They they held where they needed to hold. Let's just say that. Now it's going to be the bull's turn, and essentially the bear's turn to defend, the bull's turn to try and break out. Where we have this, trend line that I've been talking about for quite some time, where, if it comes Friday, guys, again, Friday's a half day, but, if we test it on Friday, we could see almost a $10 move from today's close, which would be about another 1.7% rally from pretty much today's close. But that's where things get interesting for multiple reasons. The first and foremost being the obvious one is, well, this is technically a resistance level, this trend line. If the bulls can break past this and we can start closing nice candles above it, unlike here where you can see we kind of went below it temporarily, but we never ended up closing, convincing candles below the trend line. Same idea up here. If we can start closing bullish, nice looking candles above the trend line, especially with the exponential moving averages supporting the price, I mean, that's pretty bullish in my opinion, right? That obviously will be quite bullish. However, on the flip side, if we start getting a rejection around this sort of mid, let's say 430s region, that would be, a sign that we can start to collapse from here, and then we'll have to reassess. Technically speaking, we can reject from here and make our way down and actually break still below these trend lines down here and make our way back to the 360s region. That still is a possibility. We just simply do not know yet. We need to wait for confirmation. We need to see how price reacts around that area. Again, no one has a crystal ball. But the interesting thing and the kind of confluence that's appearing, once we get that test closer to the mid 430s, is that 4-hour SMI down here, right? Again, I have this set to the 4-hour time frame. So even though I'm on the daily, this is still showing what the 4-hour is showing, where you can see, right? We're near the top, right? We're near the top of it now. We're approaching that top. And again, I've said many times, this thing on Tesla stock, again, it's not perfect by any means, right? If we actually get that confirmed breakout, this will, not be correct this time, of course. But more often than not, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Whenever this thing is near the bottom, Tesla is near the bottom. Whenever this thing is near the top, Tesla is near the top, right? So, let's see how this plays out. I mean, there is a decent amount of compression here. So I really wouldn't be surprised, personally, if I had to take a guess, if you will. I really wouldn't be surprised if we reject. Get a small little push up here, get a rejection, get some bulls, trapped, get a rejection, come back down. And the still bullish case would be get a rejection to these levels down here, and then we rock it. The bear case would be reject down here, and then essentially do something like this. Let's see. But the interesting confluence with the trendline resistance coming up and that 4-hour SMI now approaching that sort of, danger zone, if you will, from, continuation on the bullish side. So let's see how that plays out. This is where things will start getting very interesting. People that have been following this channel know how, for the most part, how pretty damn good this thing has been. For instance, when we tanked down all the way over here, things look grim. It absolutely looked grim. It looked like we're without question about to go all the way down to these levels down here. But we found support of the trend line and, of course, that 4-hour SMI. So that was a pretty good confluence there. Now we're kind of doing the opposite. So let's see, guys. Let's see how this plays out, right? Don't forget, we still have some decent resistance around the 430s, right? This level up here, you can see kind of around the 430s. This was an area of support and resistance and essentially a battleground, if you will, between bulls and bears. So it's not just going to be, in my opinion, as simple as we just blast right past that. I hope it is. Believe me. I mean, make things a lot easier, to be completely honest with you. But watch for this mid 430s, guys, coming into as early as Friday. This is going to be that level to watch for, in my opinion. The next thing to watch for is going to be the weekly. The weekly is honestly not looking atrocious, right? Absolutely not. We're still holding the cloud, the 921 cloud, which is good. We're holding that trend line on the weekly as well. But depending on how things close and depending on how things go, because don't forget, maybe Friday, the first half of the day, which is a half day already, so technically a quarter of the day of a normal day, we could get that push up to retest that trend line and get a sharp rejection. That's always a possibility. But we are technically still coming up on the weekly into support, was support, now resistance regions up here as well. We can see all these wicks on these candles down here. So again, to make it as simple as possible, the bulls have an opportunity now to do what the bears couldn't do and show strength above the trend line and show strength and continued momentum higher. But again, there is still that confluence that, in the mid 430s coming up as well. So it's going to be pretty important to see how price reacts here. I do expect a test of it again as early as Friday, maybe Monday, but that's where things will start getting more and more interesting. The other thing I like to look at once the weekly candles start to close is how's the overall momentum. One way to look at momentum on the weekly is, well, how are the EMAs looking? But another way I like to judge momentum is simply going to be the stochastic down here. If the weekly candle is closing and it's closing in that green box, to me that tells me the fact that there's a higher chance than not that momentum continues to stay bullish. Now, if we start closing weekly candles below that, that's where things start getting more rocky potentially, right? At least for the most parts. So let's see, guys. Let's see if we can continue showing the strength. And essentially, if we can close this week with this kind of strength, especially above the mid 430s, that would be a good sign moving forward on Tesla stock. But the main thing I'm personally watching for is going to be the main thing I've been watching for this whole time. These two trend lines. One of them will eventually snap. And as we continue getting tighter and tighter and tighter within this kind of zone right here, the price is compressing. So, there's momentum definitely building up once a direction is finally picked. So let's see, guys. No reason to, no reason to think you have a crystal ball. No reason to think you're smarter than the market. Let the market show you its hand. Let it tell you what it wants to do. What else is there? That's pretty much it for Tesla, to be completely honest with you. Let's take a look at options flow very quickly for Tesla. And then we'll take a quick look at the broader market as well and see what's happening there. So earlier in the day, we had a lot of bullish flow go in for Friday. This coming Friday, 430 strikes, 420 strikes, 425 strikes, even some 422 strikes. A lot of bullish flow there. And then as the day ended, we saw pretty much more of that. Some bearishness down here. Could be a little bit of a hedge. But the point is the bulls are definitely still outnumbering the bears when it comes to calls for, Friday, right? Again, markets close tomorrow. So it seems like the bulls, they definitely want one more push at least going into Friday. I really wouldn't be surprised if Friday gets us into that sort of 430s region. It really wouldn't shock me. So let's see how it goes, guys. But it seems like the market, or at least Tesla in this case, is looking pretty good going into Friday. The broader market, what's the broader market doing? Very interesting situation SPY is in, right? SPY, the market looks good. It looks... I don't want to say that, and then we get some crazy thing on, let's say, Monday, and everything tanks, and I look like an idiot. But the bears have had a lot of chances to really bring this thing down. So the way I look at the market is this. For SPY, I did slightly do some readjustments. I shared with my members last night. Obviously, I'm sharing it now with you guys. Initially, I had the trend line like this, which was the bullish one initially on that break. I think it was something like this. I can't remember. Something like that, which was good. That was the first break, which was really, really good. The second trend line break, which we closed almost right at it, is the one you see on your screen right now. So if price rejects, I want to make sure that if SPY rejects, if maybe starting Friday, or maybe, maybe Friday is nothing. Maybe nothing happens on Friday. Maybe it's just a very slight red day. But then let's say Monday, the first trading day of December, things, it's a red day. Maybe things tank a little bit, right? For SPY, for instance, this would be a drop of about 1%. If we get that kind of sell-off going into, again, maybe Monday, I want to see SPY now turn this area that was a resistance, was a support, was a resistance, back to support. If we start losing SPY essentially below 670, that would be a bit of a concern because we have a lot of support now in the low 670s now that we broke back above that, right? What do we have? Well, we have just literally support itself, right? That I just showed you. But we also have the EMAs now that will be slowly getting back to that bullish crossover. The market usually, more often than not, likes to ride these bullish EMAs higher as long as they're bullishly crossed. And especially as long as price is above the 21 EMA, the market does usually like to be more bullish than not. Now, it is worth mentioning we are getting a little bit extended from them right here. So, again, I wouldn't be surprised to see a pullback, maybe to start off December, small little pullback, maybe 1% or so. Back to the exponential moving averages, back to that low 670 support. But as long as that holds, and especially once this trend line also snaps, the bulls are in my opinion, pretty good control here, right? They're definitely regaining quite a bit of control. Now, what's the bearish case, right? I always like to look at both sides of the coin. What's the bear case here for the market moving forward? We don't break this trend line. This was a gap fill up here. We had a gap here, and we had a fair value gap right here. We filled both of them in one go today. And we get a sharp rejection from here. We lose 670s, and then we ended up obviously, pretty much going lower from there. Lose 670s and lose the exponential moving averages, which again is pretty much sitting around 670 as well. Losing and closing below that would be that sort of, okay, wait a minute. Maybe the bullish strength isn't actually here just yet. That would be the red flag. If we start seeing that kind of, potential bearish pressure, that would be the red flag. But as long as the bulls continue holding the low 670s on any potential pullback, I see bulls in control here overall. The Qs, kind of the similar situation here for the most part, right? You can see the Qs are actually closing then higher, slightly to be fair, but still higher than the high of this massive red candle that we had. Ended up getting a nice breakout as well, arguably setting a fresh higher high because we were setting lower lows, lower highs. And now this is arguably the first higher high. So from here, kind of similar to SPY, any pullback on the Qs, I want to see any continued strength back around low 600s, 605, give or take, right? Back where the EMAs are, things like that, maybe a trend line retest, right? I want to see something like this continue to hold. Similar to SPY on the Qs, if we start losing 600, that would be a red flag. That's not levels that the bulls want to start losing. We want to be holding this low 600s on Qs and the low 670s on SPY. If that can happen, I do think the bulls are setting up what could be a very nice quick little dip into a continuation higher for a potential Christmas rally. The bearish case, obviously, like I said, losing the 600s roughly on the Qs. That would not be something the bulls want, or the bulls want to see, and that's what the bears want to accomplish. So that is worth mentioning to see how that goes. The VIX is tanking. The VIX is losing a lot of key support, a lot of key levels. It is closing back below the orange line. So the VIX is tanking quite a bit here. Now, if this thing can continue being submerged essentially below that orange line and not really show too much more strength above that, kind of like what it failed to do here, that would be a good sign of things to come. But there is something worth mentioning that someone did buy some pretty aggressive calls for the VIX 24 strike for December 17th. That's only about what? 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, about 3 weeks out. So not too far out, pretty much out of the money, 540K. So someone is potentially expecting a, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm like blanking out on my thought process here. A spike in the VIX, or it could be a hedge. We obviously don't know for sure. Maybe this is just a hedge. We don't know. But worth mentioning something like that as well. So let's see how this plays out, guys. But overall, the bulls are being set up now with a pretty phenomenal opportunity. If any pullback from here, they can continue holding those key supports and those key levels. I think the market is looking like it wants to potentially continue higher. But let's see, guys, one step at a time, of course. We're in a bit of a, the market's in a bit of a flimsy situation here, right? It's a bit of a difficult read sometimes over here, but, if we can start seeing those bullish situations continue to develop, which they so far are, I think the bulls can continue gaining control moving forward for the rest of the year. So let's see, guys. But thanks for watching. See you tomorrow or Friday. Maybe tomorrow, actually, for that video. Peace.